The blade trembled in her hand as she realized the truth that would shatter everything she believed. This wasn't just a trial. It was a trap. And love was the price. In a forgotten temple carved from bone and ash, a vampire stood at the altar, her crimson dress torn by battle, her heart clutched in her hand, still beating. Across from her, a wolf bled onto sacred stone, eyes gold with fury, pain, and something else, something dangerous. A voice echoed through the ruins. To win the war, you must win each other. But what no one warned them was what they'd lose along the way. 3 trials, 1 bond. If they failed, their marriage and the peace between their peoples would dissolve forever. But if they succeeded, they'd become something feared even by the gods. 2 creatures once made for war, who chose to love. And the first trial? It begins with blood. The blade trembled in her hand as she realized the truth that would shatter everything she believed. This wasn't a union, it was a war, masked as a wedding. The great hall reeked of iron and rose ash, where chandeliers made of bone swung gently from the high arches. Lady Miren stood at the altar, skin like frost-kissed marble, dressed in crimson silk that clung to her like a second skin. Across from her, Alpha Cassian, broad, battered, golden-eyed, stared with the contempt of a beast forced into a cage. Between them, the ceremonial flame burned white, flickering violently as if rejecting the union about to be sealed. The council watched, in cold silence. Miren's voice did not tremble as she said the ancient vow. Cassian hesitated, but then, with clenched jaw, spoke the final words. The magic ignited. The bond snapped into place like a chain around their souls. From that moment, they couldn't be more than 10 steps apart. Every pulse of her fear was mirrored in his veins. Every echo of his rage vibrated in hers. As the fire died, a robed judge stepped forward and announced, 3 trials will decide the fate of your union. Pass them and peace reigns. Fail, and the bond will be shattered. Along with it, the treaty. Miren's smile was sharp and bitter. So we play your little game. Cassian's response was a low growl. And may the gods pity the loser. The flame sputters black for a single second. A bad omen no one dares to name, but Miren sees it and remembers the last time black fire burned on the night her brother died. The first test smelled of rot and iron, and beneath their feet the ground pulsed like living flesh. They entered the labyrinth of blood at dusk, its walls breathing as if alive, slick with red moss and dripping shadows. Miren's senses were on fire. The air carried the copper tang of spilled blood, the bitter burn of old spells, and something else, something older. Cassian stepped beside her, his breath steady but taut. "You've walked darker halls than this, haven't you?" She didn't answer. Her fingers brushed the wall. It moaned. The labyrinth didn't want them to pass. It wanted to feed. They were tested immediately, a corridor filled with illusions, her dead brother laughing as his throat reopened. Cassian's first kill, eyes wide and accusing, each vision aimed to divide them, and it nearly worked. Miren pushed Cassian away, snarling at his hesitation. He roared back, "You think pain is yours alone?" But when the floor cracked open and swallowed her whole, It was his hand that yanked her back, tearing his own shoulder from its socket to do it. They stumbled into the final chamber, an altar drenched in centuries of sacrifice. The path only opened when Miren slashed her palm and let her blood spill onto the stone. Cassian caught her before she collapsed. "You gave too much," he muttered. "You're not mine to protect," she hissed. He didn't let go. Behind them, something ancient stirs in the labyrinth walls. Watching, waiting, whispering her name in a voice that should be long dead. The distance between them was magic forged. But what grew in the space between was far more dangerous than any spell. Their chamber after the trial was small, candlelit and tense. Miren sat on the edge of the bed, her body aching, her pride more so. Cassian leaned against the wall, shirtless, shoulder-bound in blood-stained cloth. "You nearly died in there," he said. She raised her chin. "And yet here I sit. Do try to keep up." The bond throbbed with each bitter word. What one felt, the other echoed. Pain, anger, heat. When she bathed in the stone tub, steam curling around her like mist, he sat rigid on the floor, eyes shut. But the magic didn't care for modesty. He felt the warmth of the water on his skin, the sting of her bruises, the soft ache of loneliness she tried to hide. She tried to block him out, failed. That night, their argument nearly cracked the bond itself. "You think I enjoy this?" he spat. "You think I wanted to be tied to a corpse who plays queen while her people rot?" She flinched. Then struck. "Better a queen than a mongrel pretending to lead." Silence fell. But beneath it, a heartbeat too fast, a breath too shallow. They stood inches apart, almost kissed, didn't, the mark of the bond flares red-hot on both their chests. Something is changing, and neither of them can stop it. The moon revealed what daylight hides, secrets buried in bone and fears too fragile to voice. They stood in the circle of truth beneath the full moon, surrounded by runes that shimmered like fireflies. The trial was cruelly simple. Speak your deepest fear. If you lie, the bond will break. Miren crossed her arms. "Let's end this farce." Cassian didn't look at her, just stepped into the circle. The magic hummed. "I'm afraid," he said slowly, "of loving someone who will never stay." His voice was low, raw. "Of being needed only until I'm no longer useful." The silence that followed cracked like a whip. Miren's lips parted. She stepped forward. She thought of blood-soaked gowns, of her fiancé's lifeless eyes, of what it meant to lose. And she lied. "I fear losing control." Pain hit instantly. The bond screamed. Her chest burned as if torn open from the inside. Cassian caught her before she fell, jaw clenched. "You lied," he said. "You didn't trust me with the truth." She looked up, eyes glassy. "I don't even trust myself." The runes at their feet flicker. For the first time, the bond threatens to snap, and something dark watches from beyond the circle, something that feeds on broken vows. 3 years ago, when the screams first echoed through her childhood home, Miren learned that love meant death. In the quiet after the trial, Miren sat alone in the courtyard, fingers trailing over a rosebush that refused to bloom. Cassian watched her from the shadows. The bond between them buzzed with tension, thin, fraying, but still there. She spoke first, voice soft. He was kind. He died anyway. She told the story of her first betrothed, gentle, golden-eyed like Cassian, killed during a rebel raid meant to disrupt peace talks. She never forgave herself for loving him. Cassian sat beside her, silent for a long time. Then, I had a brother, younger. He followed me into battle once, took my place in a charge. His voice cracked. They returned his bones in pieces. Miren didn't touch him, but the distance between them closed in ways that mattered. We both carry ghosts, she said. Maybe that's why the bond won't break. For a moment, they were two broken things in the same shape. You make me feel things I buried, she confessed, and I hate you for it. He looked at her, really looked. Then hate me, but don't lie to me again. A shadow passes overhead. A raven with white eyes drops a blood-stained ribbon onto Miren's lap, the mark of the next trial, and a memory from a nightmare she thought she forgot. The wind carried secrets that should have died long ago, names spoken in venom, and one voice that once raised Cassian now sought to ruin him. The training grounds were abandoned, wrapped in a fog that tasted of ash and forgotten oaths. Cassian walked alone beneath the twilight sky, but Miren followed. She could feel something twisting inside him through the bond. You're hiding something, she murmured. He didn't answer, only stopped before a crumbling arch. That's when Helkar stepped out of the mist, robes dark, eyes burning with bitter truth. You always were weak, boy, the former mentor said, tied to a corpse in silk, as if love will tame the beast inside you. Miren moved fast, her fangs bared, but Cassian held her back with a single arm. Don't, he warned. This is my ghost to face. Helkar spat secrets like poison. Cassian was never meant to lead. The council chose him not for strength, but for obedience. The trials were designed to break them, the bond. A cage. End the farce, and we end this peace that rots us all. Cassian's silence cut deeper than swords. And if I refuse? He asked at last. Helkar smiled. Then she dies in the next trial. And it'll be your hand that kills her. Miren saw the flicker in Cassian's eyes, the war between honor and fury, the past and the now. She stepped between them. Try to touch him, she whispered to Helkar, and I'll show you why vampires rule the night. The fog thickened. Helkar vanished into it, laughing, but he left something behind, a parchment sealed with blood. Cassian didn't open it, not yet. That night, Cassian couldn't sleep. Miren sat by the window watching moonlight bleed through the clouds. He was like a father to you, she said, and now he's poison. Cassian didn't reply. Instead, he reached out, not to touch her, but to close the space between them with silence. The bond pulsed warm, then cold. The next morning, Miren wakes alone. The parchment lies open beside her. 3 words burn into the paper like fire. Trial 2 begins. Some truths are buried not in darkness, but in the thin sliver of light between trust and betrayal. The arena was circular and hollow, carved into the mountainside like a wound in the world. Black lanterns swung from obsidian hooks, and a blood moon hung low overhead, In the center, a mirror of silver water shimmered, not a drop disturbed. Miren and Cassian stood at opposite edges, told only this: one must cross, the other must speak. No rules, no clues, only instinct. Miren stepped first. Her bare feet touched the water, and immediately illusions bloomed. Her brother drowning, her mother turning away, a throne of bone with her sitting atop it. Alone. On the shore, Cassian was meant to describe what he saw. Instead, he described what he felt. You're afraid of what you'll become if you stop pretending to be cold. His words sliced through her illusions more than any sword. But when it was Cassian's turn to walk, Miren hesitated. What she saw nearly shattered her. Him as a child, caged and beaten by his own kind. A boy forced to fight for power he didn't want. Then an older Cassian, eyes hollow, killing for a crown. She whispered, "You think if you love me, you'll become like them." And that broke the spell. The water turned to glass beneath his feet. He crossed. As the arena faded, the judges reappeared, murmuring among themselves. The trial had not just tested truth, it had revealed bond depth. Their pain had aligned, that should have strengthened the link, but Miren felt the bond grow colder. Cassian was pulling away, emotionally, magically. She didn't understand why, not yet. That night, as they rest side by side, Cassian's hand brushes hers in sleep. She hears him whisper a name, not hers, a name she's never heard before. Before her, there was another. And the heart, even in war, is never an empty battlefield. The next day is soaked in silence. Cassian avoids her eyes. Miren feels the name like a splinter in her mind. Lyra. Who was she? The bond reveals nothing unless opened willingly, and Cassian keeps it locked tight. She finally corners him in the garden where twilight kisses every leaf with silver. "Say it," she demands. "Say her name again." His jaw tenses. "She's dead," he says. "That should be enough." But it isn't. He tells her slowly. Lyra was a healer, human, forbidden. She mended his wounds and broke his chains. She loved him not for his strength, but for his softness, something Miren had never seen. "And you loved her," Miren says quietly. "Still do." Cassian's silence says everything. But then, "She died in my arms," he whispers, "because of my war, my name." His voice cracks. "I promised never to love again. And then, you." Miren doesn't know what hurts more, his honesty or the fear in his eyes. She realizes she's falling not for the warrior, but the broken boy inside him. And that boy still belongs to someone else. Yet even so, she doesn't leave. "Then let me be your war," she says, "and maybe your peace." The bond pulses again, slow, golden, hesitant, not warm, not cold, something new, something real. A raven lands at their feet, talons clutching a piece of torn velvet, royal colors, bloodied. The final trial is coming, and it begins at dawn. Love, when forged in war, demands the price of peace. The final trial is not a place, but a moment, a decision. They are taken to a sanctum deep beneath the council chambers. No torches, only floating orbs of light that flicker with each heartbeat. In the center lies a dagger, bone-handled, ancient, humming, with curse magic. "One must offer what they love most," the judge intones. "Not words, not promises, flesh or soul, choose." Cassian steps forward without hesitation. He bares his chest. "Take my heart." The room gasps. Even Miren. "No," she says, voice sharp. "Don't you dare make this choice for me." The bond vibrates violently between them, as if it too refuses. She reaches for the dagger. "Then we do it together," she whispers. "Or not at all." But the blade only answers to one. The judge demands action. Time runs thin. Magic begins to unravel around them. If no sacrifice is made, both will die. Cassian grabs her wrist. "Let me do this," he pleads. "You're the future. I was made for war. Let me end it." Her tears fall soundlessly. "I don't want peace if it costs you." She lifts the dagger and slices her own palm, not deep enough to die, but enough to offer. "Take my name," she says. "Take my past." The magic responds, twisting, searing, accepting. The sacrifice is made, not of body, but of identity. The council gasps. The bond erupts into flame. As the room settles, a voice speaks that should be impossible. Helkar. "Fools," he hisses from the shadows. "You passed the trial, but you failed the war." The final blade does not fall in silence. It sings with memory, betrayal, and the echo of choices made too late. Helkar emerges from the darkness, eyes alight with stolen power. "You think you chose love," he snarls. "You were manipulated, watched, twisted into this illusion." Behind him are crystal pulses filled with stolen magic, pieces of trials, pieces of them. "You were always meant to break." Cassian lunges, but Helkar's spell slams him into the wall. Miren's scream curdles the air. She calls the blood, her oldest magic. It answers, violent and red. Veins in her arms glow as she raises a storm of crimson around them. But Helkar holds Lyra's locket, now cracked and glowing dark. "You never buried her," he sneers. "You fed her memory like a wound." Cassian breaks free, roaring. He and Miren fight in tandem now, perfect synchrony. Fang and claw, spell and blade. They are chaos and balance, pain and peace, together. Helkar falls, but not before driving a knife of shadow into Miren's side. She drops. The bond pulses once, then flickers. Cassian catches her, heart unraveling. "Stay," he begs. "Don't do this." Her lips are bloodied. "I chose you," she whispers, "even when I shouldn't." He kisses her. Once. Desperate. And then everything goes white. Darkness closes in. A bell tolls in the distance. And somewhere, someone else wakes up, wearing Miren's face. She awoke in a world made of silence, but her heartbeat no longer belonged to her. Miren opened her eyes and saw herself. But the face in the polished mirror across the chamber wasn't quite hers. It smiled too easily, eyes a shade too bright, as if lit from the inside by something cruel. She touched her chest. The bond burned faintly, not broken, but warped, twisted. She was alive, but displaced. Not in her body, not in her world. Somewhere deeper, somewhere designed. The room was perfect. A replica of her childhood quarters before the war. Same white marble floors, same lavender perfume in the air. But the silence was wrong. Too still, too heavy. Then she saw the figure sitting in the corner. Herself, or what wore her face. The mirror. Miren rose slowly, head tilting. "You were never worthy," it whispered. "You are the wound, the war, the failure." Miren felt fear claw its way into her spine, but refused to show it. "This is an illusion," she hissed. "A trick." The other her smiled. "No, this is the trial behind the trials, the one you were never supposed to see." It lunged. They fought, blade against blade, memory against memory. Every strike mirrored pain she once caused. every parry, a moment she refused to forgive. Then came Cassian's voice, distant, echoing, "You're not alone." His presence pulsed like a beacon. She turned her blade inward and stabbed the mirror self through the heart. The illusion shattered like glass, raining down in silence. She woke, for real this time, in his arms. But something followed her through. A fragment of the mirror remains embedded beneath her skin, unseen but alive. Peace does not come without cost, and some beasts refuse to sleep quietly. Cassian carried her into the temple, blood smeared across his jaw, heart racing. The council demanded to see the final seal. The trials were past, the bond was intact, but neither of them felt whole. "You're not telling me something," he said as he laid her down. Miren nodded weakly. The mirror. It left something behind. Before they could speak further, the ground shuddered. From the deep temple vaults came a sound like thunder wrapped in breath, a growl not heard in centuries. The seal on the chamber of Fenros, the cursed godwolf of old, had cracked. The trials were never just about unity. They were about keeping something sealed beneath them, and now it stirred. Helkar, in his dying breath, had left a crack in the seal. The trial's magic had fed it. Cassian turned to the council. You knew, and still sent us." One elder met his gaze. "We needed someone strong enough to kill the beast if it woke, and strong enough to survive each other." The temple doors exploded. A shadow rose, massive, golden-eyed, the divine ancestor of Cassian's bloodline, twisted by centuries of slumber. "It's me," Cassian whispered. "A part of me. The final trial was myself." Miren rose beside him. "Then we end it. Together." Cassian's bond mark flares gold, Miren's silver. Their hands link, and the beast roars their names as if claiming them both. Magic forged them. Trials tested them. Love chose them. But war would define them. The fight erupted like stormfire. Fenros lunged with jaws that dripped stardust and rage. Cassian met him mid-leap, claws bared, shifting into a form Miren had never fully seen. His true alpha state. Miren summoned blood magic from the temple veins themselves, turning air to blades, light to fury. The room became a chaos of stone, magic and war cries. They fought not just for peace, but for identity, for forgiveness, for the right to love after being forged by violence. Cassian took blow after blow, holding the beast back with sheer will. But he was fading. Miren knew it. She could feel it through the bond. So she made a choice. She screamed his name and transferred everything through the bond. Her strength, her grief, her love. It poured into him like wildfire. Cassian rose, half man, half god, and drove his claws into the beast's heart, his own heart. "We are more than the blood that made us," he roared, and with that, Fenros collapsed in a burst of light, disintegrating into dust that sang. But victory was not free. Cassian collapsed beside her, barely breathing. The bond flickers one last time, and then stills. Did it break or ascend? There are silences louder than screams, and in them the soul decides whether to stay or go. Miren held him in her lap, fingers trembling, lips against his brow. "You don't get to leave me now," she whispered. "Not when I finally know what I want." She tried every spell, every chant, every plea. Nothing, just silence. His heartbeat gone. The temple cried with her, winds moaning through broken glass. Then came the final echo, her own blood calling back. She pressed her lips to his and whispered the name of the vow, "By shadow and fire I bind thee." The words were not from the trials. They were older, forbidden, but real. Love, not as spell, but as anchor. Light surged from her, the bond mark reignited, not red, not silver, but a quiet white flame. Cassian gasped, eyes wide. He lived, changed, bonded not by war or trials or obligation, but by choice. The council watches in stunned silence. And a crown of flame appears above them both, unplanned, unclaimed. Magic's way of saying, "These are the ones." They were not the rulers their people wanted, but they were the ones destiny could not undo. The battlefield became a throne room. The ash became new soil. Months passed. Miren and Cassian rebuilt slowly, not as queen and king, but as partners. The union was now sacred, not political. Peace held, fragile but growing. And every morning when he woke before her, he whispered, "I choose you again." Miren tended to gardens now, roses that finally bloomed. Cassian taught cubs to fight only when needed. The scars remained, but they no longer bled. Their people began to mix. Vampires and wolves, enemies turned neighbors. No magic did that. Only the game they chose to win, not for the crown, but for each other. But far beyond the borders, someone watched from a cliff where the winds whispered of war. The mirror shard, now pulsing in someone else's hand. The voice said, "Let them have peace for now." A raven flies again, this time carrying no message, just a single drop of black flame. Not all love stories are written in gold. Some are carved into bone, etched in blood, sealed by choice. Years later, no one remembered the trials in full, only that two enemies once stood before the gods and said yes, and meant it. Children grew in villages where bloodlines once clashed. Songs were sung about the vampire who chose the wolf, and the wolf who bowed only to her. In the palace garden beneath blooming roses, Miren sat reading. Cassian arrived with muddy boots and a tired smile. She looked up. "You smell like wolf," he grinned, "and you smell like home." No more trials, no more gods, just days one after the other, some hard, some soft, but always chosen. That was the real magic.